there is a special dimension about purpose. There is a special thing that happens when you're starting to get people to try to align towards a direction, a set of objectives, something that you want to create. When you're working with others, you want to maximize the amount of unity and at the same time give as much freedom and decentralized decision making as possible, because you want people to be super empowered to just keep deciding, but in a way that keeps things united. And we've talked about first the element of trust, which is like people working together need trust. We've talked about it like when they encounter problems, they need to be able to create a stronger position, so the element, we call it like
have the strength to overcome them.
The strength to overcome them, is true. And now we're going to talk to you about purpose, because purpose is about setting direction. It's about like there's a united front, but people stay united when they have a common purpose. But there are certain nuances, because the moment that you start to work with more than one person, even two people, even for me and Anastasia, or when you have like a whole business or a whole team, like we've seen with our clients, there is a special dimension about purpose. There is a special thing that happens when you're starting to get people to try to align towards a direction, a set of objectives, something that you want to create. And it's something that only when you are like leading an organization, you start to like, this is only a concern at this point.
And we started to notice this problem coming up, which is kind of like, if you guys don't know this, when we started our business, we actually started with creating master blueprints for an entire organization. And we'll touch on what that means in a little bit, but it was like this giant roadmap. And why was that? It was because we kept seeing that as companies grew and scaled, the founders in the beginning are very close, so they're sharing their full extent of their vision, mission, strategy, etc. to the close-knit group of people that they're working with. But as that company scales, let's say from 30 people to 300 people, suddenly the founder can't talk about every little nuance and tweak with every person to the same level of detail and care. And that problem gets exacerbated and even more when you go from 300 to 3,000, let's say. And so we were like, how can you do this? There must still be a way that people can fully explain the interconnectedness of each and every, almost like not just project or task, but each and every decision and how that relates to the greater purpose and the greater vision of the business. And that's what this is all about.
When you are running a large organization, you're going to start speaking in more abstract terms. For example, we need better resources, or we need to understand the customer experience. And so you do that because as a leader, you're seeing it in more broad terms. And what people need, because they're in their own little spaces, they need to understand the connection between the overall vision, the purpose, all the way down to their role. And this is really hard for the founder to do, or the CEO or whatever, like when you're leading the organization, it's really hard to do unless you dedicate time and space, because you have to do it across every part of the business and you have to interconnect it. It's a real science to it, but what's super important is that you understand there's also a dimensionality to this. It's not just about connecting tasks. It's about connecting also drive, purpose, emotion into it. Like, how does the finance department need to feel? And what does that mean in terms of the software that they get, the timings that they choose, the efficiency and the measures that they allocate,
And some of this, even, understanding that the emotion and the feeling behind it is stuff we only discovered after we started exploring this. So the first thing was we were like, okay, everyone's doing these giant strategic PowerPoint, 100 slides, let's go, annual presentation or quarterly if you're lucky. And even some of the best companies, what they were doing is they would present it and then they'd do like a little summary sheet that they would pass out or post up around the organization. And this was already like, this gave us a hint. Okay, so there's something there around repeating it and spreading the word, because these companies were really successful. But we decided, let's take it a step further. So we started looking into, again, the science. What's the fundamentals? How do we process information? And it took us back even to, when we talked about making decisions, it's like, okay, well, it has to be aligned with our physiology, right? So does this. To create and embed a purpose deeply in someone's psyche to the point where it informs their decisions even after the initial enthusiasm or the freshness of it in their mind fades. You need to design it in a certain way. And for example, one of the things we discovered was that our brain actually functions in large-scale brain networks. What that means is when you're given a task or you need to do something, certain regions of your brain all light up at the same time. So we're like, scientists decided these are interconnected, so we're going to call this cluster when they're doing this something, when they're doing this something else. And the one large-scale brain network that I want to call out today is the salience network. Now, a lot of people don't know what the word salience means. It means something that is important to you. So the salience network, what it does, really cool function. I know this is a lot of trivia, but basically what happens is our brains, every single second I think it is, process between 6 to 10 million bits of information. It's everything. It's the lights, the sounds, the images around you, all of the little bits and pieces. You're taking all of that in. But our conscious mind, the one that makes us aware of what we're thinking, only processes about 50 bits of information. So that means that 99.9995% of the stimuli that we get every single second is processed below the level of consciousness. So why is that important? It means that when you're presenting your presentation or you're talking about these important things, really your people are only focusing on a specific part of it. And if they zone out to focus on one thing, like maybe you, messed up saying something, then they didn't really catch what your actual point was. And so what you want to do is make sure that you are setting up the information to be digested by the salience network, which functions through repetition and intention. These are really important things.
The intention part, when people don't just, you can't control what their intention is, what they intend to do. So you need to make it very appealing to them that they intend to achieve the sales target that you set for them, or they intend to build the product that you want them to build. And you do that because you're emotionally connecting what is the product itself or the sales figure to what they actually want. And you do that very carefully, actually. You need to really consider. Here's the difference. Imagine that you put like a sales target for the year, and this is just a sales target that your CFO gave you that you need to achieve to establish a certain valuation. Okay. But you could also explain it like, guys, in order to become the best company in our field and be the star team that we know we are going to outshoot this sales target this year and give it all our best so that we can then go and celebrate as a bonus to Fiji, for example, and have a great party there. Now you created a whole story and emotion around it, and you've connected the target itself to an emotional core. This is very important because now people in their brain, their intentionality and their salience network is going to start to tell the people, okay, this is a very important thing. I need to focus on this. When I wake up in the morning, I need to start thinking about it, And this is what actually then creates results. And once it's done, you can actually let that team go. And they'll, by themselves, start to go towards this target.
So this is exactly what we're talking about. Why do we need to design whatever goals or objectives we put up in such a way that it isn't like intentionally embedded into the salience network? Is because the salience network is what then decides which of those 6 to 10 million pieces of information are going to be processed consciously, right? What that looks like, for example, is let's say the sales target or whatever. Let's continue that example. Well, that means Sally, the sales rep that works for you as an individual contributor, is gonna then notice opportunities to make that happen, that target happen. For example, she might get an idea, like because she's passing by on the street, and normally she wouldn't pay attention to the billboards, but this one catches her eye, which is a client that you guys already have had some big news happen. So she calls to check in, and suddenly that leads to another sale. You see? So all the time it's really important to try to kind of like navigate and work with our physiology, with our salience network, in order to expand your possibilities and expand how much this will happen.
The research about this is huge. And in fact, if you really connect well purpose, and any organization can connect the purpose all the way to the tasks at hand for each department or each team, if they do that well, what's happening is the body starts to enter into, the body will literally activate certain genes that are going to help with their creative potential, with how they, there's just this really cool study that's talking about when there is purpose, the body actually starts to think, oh, I'm with my tribe, I have purpose, I'm more protected.
This was the study that they talked about. Basically, it's like when the body, when you are focusing on self-centered tasks and you're more about me and isolation, your genes, literally certain genes get activated. And for example, show that, like for example, they are activating against bacterial infections as opposed to viral, because viral means you're going to be in a community, right? When you're centered, self-centered, you're also isolated. And what happens is when you're with the community, that means like everything else goes down. Like there's so many health and longevity benefits that you get.
Yeah. Your team will literally live longer if you give them, if you connect their work to the core purpose and vision that you're trying to do. So we want to talk to you a little bit about how we figured out to do this in a way that's really scalable and a way that is very simple actually, which throws away kind of like the PowerPoint presentations and the systems and is more about giving people a visual, because there's just an introduction, let's just say. How does nature does that? How is it that nature can, for example, unify all of the cells that you've got in your body, right? And creates, allows them to do their work, but maintains a coherent structure, because the cells are independent units. They're
like individual contributors.
They're like individual contributors, but they are all, some of them are specialized, and as you know, like, and the body figured this out a long time ago. It creates a central repository of information that is the same across each cell. That's what's called the DNA in the cell nucleus, right? And we were thinking, that's interesting. Businesses don't quite do this yet very well. Yeah, there's a slide deck that gets shared, but the slide deck is often piecemeal. Whereas like when you think about DNA, it's like the whole thing is there. The DNA of the whole company is in the heart of each cell. And we started to think about a concept called a single source of truth, or we call it a master blueprint, that contains a lot of information, and to give that information to the main contributors all across your company, so that they could imagine that half the company gets wiped out, well, the other half still has all of the information that's relevant to keep expanding. So so they can just easily take over. This concept of a single source of truth, creating a blueprint with all the information, became a game changer for our clients, for the people that we've started to do it with.
So what you want to do, as a leader, is one, you need to just start with the basics, right? Learn how to make better decisions, learn how to work with the physiology and how everybody's body actually operates. And if you don't want to learn it by yourself, you can always, talk to a professional or like hire us to do it. But ultimately, you need to figure that out, because if you're working with it, it just becomes 100-fold easier. The next thing you want to do is you want to plan the time necessary to do this work, right? This is not something to be taken lightly.
Normally, for example, for us, we'll take a leadership team or an executive team after a lot of pre-planning out to really finalize the blueprint, because it has to contain all the information, but it's actually very hard to interconnect the departments. You'd think that because they work together, they know what the other person does, but they don't. So you need to like really they will after this, and you need to make sure that, oh, these are my initiatives, this is actually like what my department does, and this is how it connects to the next department in line, and the next department in line. So the blueprints look like massive, sort of like massive maps of the company.
And that's what you do. The third thing is you actually build the blueprint, right? And it requires, again, not just to detail everything and throw all of the information there, but it requires that it is set up and done in such a way that it is integrated not just into the conscious, but also into the subconscious of the people, so that it can guide their decisions throughout the year, not just in the first couple of months when you come back and you're all excited and you've presented it. It needs to be long-lasting. And to do that, you need to design it in a special way. You need to make sure that all of the pieces of information are conducive to this purpose.
Your brain takes in information in many abstract ways. It's not just rational talk. So when you create this blueprint, it can't just be a set of tasks, objectives, or goals. It's not that. It has to include those things, because that's part of what the brain needs, but it also has to include things like emotions, things like the meaningful connection, the key personnel that's involved, because that's much easier for not the primitive system, but actually the way that we've evolved. Nature has already figured out that by connecting things in a more abstract way, you can actually cover more ground. And so your blueprint has to contain this, has to speak the language of people's subconscious, this essentially, for it to be very well integrated into people's subconscious.
The success you'll see then is like incredible. We'll continue to share some of the science and experiences that we have, but just to give you a little bit of a taste, there was one company that we did this with, and it was interesting because they put a really big goal up at the top of their blueprint, right? And it was a goal that was financially, I think, 10 times greater than what their current figure of profit was, right? Around there. Something. And so everyone thought, man, this is, at first they thought, hey, this is great. Everyone said the same number almost at the same time. You know how we talked about in the previous video, like everyone was completing each other's sentences. So they all came up with this number. And then after the retreat, like a week after, they look at it and they're like, what did we just sign up for? Because they were no longer in that state. And it was a little bit intimidating. It was a big stretch. But we called to check in on them in a year. And in a year's time, they tell us, guys, the owner tells us, it's so crazy that you call me today, because just yesterday I got the news that this figure came up. But it didn't come up quite in the way that they expected, because it came up as in the form of almost like a grant for the whole industry.
But the number in the grant was exactly the same number that they had put.
And it was a precise number. It wasn't like 100 or 200. It was like, I think it was 53 or something. Yeah. It was like not a square number. So it was really bizarre that this is the exact number that got granted. And it was interesting because it was like an umbrella term, so it was up at the top, but it was granted for the whole industry. So there was a lesson in there that you have to be really precise with how you put the
with what you put on because it's something that you then imagine if your DNA was a little bit off, like your cell wouldn't know how to function. They don't know how to fit. So you need to be extremely precise. And it is the work that you do with your leadership team, like this above all, because instead of doing all of these little misaligned decisions, and you get together, you align everybody on a single source of truth document. And it is so natural for human beings. Ever since our tribal days, we've been putting things up on the wall, like murals, We've been putting think of I remember in Las Cuevas de Antequera, which is,
what?
Las Cuevas de Antequera is some caves that, prehistoric caves in Spain. And you see there, they're doing their hunting, their hunting plan in the wall. And it's like, man, people have been running businesses with stuff on the wall all the time, but we've switched into PowerPoints and we've switched into reports digital, and documents and digital. And the brain is this is not working for me. I
It
can't.
has a hard time squaring it, harder time than with this other
No,
stuff.
what you want is like generals and some sort of like table or something on the wall that details the whole picture. People then like will gravitate to it. It'll be very easy for them to visualize it. Visualization has to do a little bit with what we were talking before, which is you can only visualize things that you feel really that you can believe are going to happen.
That's working at the level of belief, if you remember us talking about that.
Yeah, so like people can visualize things that they think are possible, you know? And so you want to make sure that whatever you put on the wall that people resonate with and stuff. But this is going to create massive amount of alignment because people have the same visual that speaks to them at a purpose level. This is the key. This is the goal. You can do this with 100 people, 200, 1,000, 3,000. It doesn't really matter because now you're putting the same picture up there for everyone. And in a detailed way, they will have to be able to see, okay, I work here and I can now see how my work is connected across the rest.
And make sure everything squares properly too, because if you're telling the finance department one thing and then the sales department another thing, but those two are very different, it's not going to work, right?
Yeah.
Because there's conflicting priorities. That's
Yeah.
what causes a lot of the friction.
Yeah, this sort of solution takes away conflicting priorities. It takes away misunderstandings at a leadership level. Nothing like that. It allows for a decentralization of decisions because now you, as a leader, as a CEO, as a founder, everything that you are constantly repeated, you've put now in one place. And other people can start to, it's very easy for you to transmit all the information about where the company is heading and even to adapt it.
Yeah, and then you can really leverage everyone's, power behind it. That's the way of purpose is like.
Yes.
Taking it to the next level.
There's this beautiful research on basketball players that when they were able to visualize something happening, that actually that counted just as much as when they were practicing, Both are good, like obviously the physical practice and the visualization together made the best results. Now imagine your whole business looking at the single source of truth, at the whole vision, the strategy, the execution, all connected in one, but it's important that you connect the execution of it all in one place. And everybody kind of like beating to that same boom, 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 to visualizing, thinking of the whole thing in a way that it really speaks to them, that they feel like strongly attached from a purpose perspective. Attached, no, inspired, inspired.
So we hope this helps you to start you on your own journey of creating this kind of document. And if you want some help, we're always here. You can shoot us a message or reach out to us. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
See you soon.